It seems like every other day I come across a video about someone leaving their tech job or quitting coding altogether.
I'm leaving my $350,000 dream job at Google to move into my parents' basement.
I decided to leave my software engineering job at Google.
3 years after working at this company, I quit.
And despite the currently brutal job market, it appears that young people are quitting without having another job lined up. Are these just isolated stories or signs of an actual trend? And why is it that despite the outsized salaries and extraordinary perks, are engineers leaving lucrative jobs in big tech after just over a year? This video is going to be an honest conversation about money, work, and what it feels like to be a software engineer today. Although it feels like the hype surrounding working in tech has died down recently, what does the data actually say? It shouldn't be a surprise that the number of computer science graduates have more than doubled over the last decade. More recent data shows that there's been an increase in CS undergrad enrollment every single year from 2019 up to 2023, despite the fact that overall undergrad enrollment in the US declined by 1 to 2% annually. This shows that while Gen Z is more reluctant to go to college overall, computer science is still a popular major if they choose to attend. But as we know, the job market took a significant turn for the worse in 2023, so has the trend shifted since then? According to The Atlantic, enrollment at some of the top CS programs in the country is declining by a significant amount. But it's hard to say whether this is the start of a long-term decline or just returning back to normal after the learn to code craze during 2021 and 2022. I also got in contact with an insider who works at one of the top computer science programs in Canada, and he gave me the following enrollment data for the past several years. As you can see, the total number of people applying to computer science has dropped from 1190 in 2022 all the way down to 810 this year in 2025. And correspondingly, the grades of the accepted applicants have also dropped. Again, it just seems like the number of CS majors is simply returning to normal after a couple years of hypergrowth. And I know some of this might seem really obvious. We've been talking about the crappy job market for ages, but I think it's worthwhile digging into the data to fact check some widely held assumptions. So aside from the tougher job market conditions, what are the reasons people are leaving their current roles?
It's now 12:30 a.m. and I'm still working on this.
Working at one of the big tech companies has always been the holy grail for software engineers. Getting through their tough hiring process signaled to you and everyone else that you were a credible and talented developer. There are entire industries centered around how to help you game the system in order to get an offer at one of these prestigious companies. If you ask me, the obsession is almost cult-like. But these days, FANG, or I guess Mango, companies more and more resemble the stuffy corporate culture that they once rebelled against. With the constant threat of layoffs, stack ranking, and return to work mandates, it really feels like finance more than ever before. After laying off 4,000 people for what they publicly deemed as low performers, Meta expanded the number of people they're putting into the lowest rating, below expectations, in their mid-year performance review. What appeared to be a stable career at an organization with endless resources is now a pressure cooker environment where you're fighting for scope and impact just to be able to keep your job. And while the compensation at one of these tech giants has always been a huge incentive to work there, these days their salaries are no longer an outlier. In fact, there are plenty of well-funded startups that now match or exceed the salaries that you can get at big tech. I know FANG is now an outdated acronym, but if I go to levels.fyi and look at the companies with the highest total comp, the only FANG company on that list is Netflix, coming in at number 5. The other issue is impact. Working at big tech used to mean that you were at the forefront of cutting-edge technology and having an impact on an application used by billions of people around the world. But as these companies have matured, their pace of innovation is slowing down, and the priority is now protecting their existing revenue generators rather than moving fast and exploring new territory. And some people who leave may have realized that they were there for the wrong reasons. I was talking to a friend who previously worked at Google. He spent years grinding and getting rejected to finally land an offer. And he told me, I knew I wanted to leave after my first day. It's a mistake to get emotionally attached to this idea of a dream job. So many of us spend time chasing a goal only to have an existential crisis when we realize we don't even want the prize once we get there. Despite the fancy title and the prestige, it's still just a job at the end of the day. And if you genuinely don't like the work, the free food and nice office won't make much of a meaningful difference. It's really hard to separate the life that we really desire from what society has ingrained in us, what we should want. There's actually a term for this. It's called mimetic desire. And it's this idea that the things and experiences we want don't always come from within us, and they're heavily influenced by what we see other people want. We end up climbing the ladder everyone else is climbing because it's a more certain path, and it's a lot easier than doing the work of deciding what we want. And I think it takes a lot of conviction and a ton of courage that lots of people don't have. I've also seen a lot of people on social media, especially YouTube, publicly announce they're taking a break or leaving their jobs altogether to pursue entrepreneurship or content creation full-time.
At the end of the day, I want to try pursuing something for myself.
One of those reasons being that I became a live streamer.
If, like me, you might also be wondering, how are they affording this? Or what's the backup plan? It seems absolutely insane to be voluntarily leaving Google, especially in this job market. But being a small content creator myself with, dare I say, a small bit of understanding, I get why they'd want to leave a safe job. Is it delusional? Yes. But anyone who's accomplished anything extraordinary has had to be a little bit delusional at one point. The way I see it, the upside is enormous, and the downside isn't nearly as bad as what you might think. Worst case scenario, things don't work out and you go back to your cushy job at Google. Not only that, but many of them who quit their jobs on a whim tend to skew quite young and have no dependents. If you're gonna take a risk, you might as well do it now. And if they've worked at a big tech company for several years, presumably they've also had the opportunity to build a solid amount of savings to fund an extended break from corporate life. And most importantly, for those with solid ad revenue and brand deals, it doesn't even make financial sense for them to stay at their current job. I think one of the reasons there's backlash or ambivalence towards people who quit their real jobs to be entrepreneurs or content creators is because much of their audience, myself included, have had the experience of struggling so hard to land a job half as good as the one they're leaving. And to some people, it may come off as they're ungrateful for their opportunity, which I know isn't the case. I've taken career breaks and I don't have any plans to stop coding, but I think that the idea that we need to spend 40 years doing the exact same thing, following the same path, is outdated. That being said, we should acknowledge that being able to take a year off or quit your job altogether to venture out on your own is an enormous privilege a lot of people don't have. If you choose to prioritize you and your family's stability at a boring 9-to-5, it doesn't mean you are any less capable or motivated. Simply because someone else's circumstances allow them the flexibility to explore other opportunities doesn't mean yours can. Gen Z, in particular, are more vocal in pushing back against this toxic hustle culture and the idea that you need to sacrifice everything today for the possibility of a payoff in the future. Young people are coming of age in a system where they know they can do all the right things, get a college degree, work your butt off, and still not come close to being able to afford housing. And everyone still blames you for being lazy and entitled. Talking so publicly and honestly about burnout is a really brave thing to do, given how risky it is to do so on a public platform where future hiring managers and coworkers could watch whatever it is that you're posting. I do sometimes think about the impact this might have on their careers, given the stigma still attached to mental health issues. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons I've really stayed away from this topic. But by normalizing talking about burnout and taking sabbaticals from work for mental health reasons, it creates space for others to feel safe doing the same. There's a less common reason people are feeling cynical about coding, and that's AI. There's something inherently rewarding about losing track of time, deeply focused on a really hard programming problem, and coming up to a solution on your own. Or even spending an afternoon refactoring a mumbo jumbo of spaghetti code into beautiful prose. You sort of feel like a genius, basking in the glory of your own productivity. Vibe coding for a lot of us does take away some of that fun. It's like baking a cake from scratch and going over every single detail versus throwing a cake mix into a pan and calling it a day. The more that I have relied on AI coding tools, the more I've noticed I've become more of a project manager and prompt writer and bug fixer, trying to play whack-a-mole with the bugs that they constantly introduce. And on top of that, there's now research to support a suspicion I have talked about and I've suspected for a really long time. Relying too heavily on AI reduces our own critical thinking abilities. But despite these downsides, the push to use AI tools is really strong. Shopify, for example, has even publicly said that they factor in AI usage into their performance reviews. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a huge proponent of AI coding tools. I feel like if you're not using them, you're going to be a little bit behind because everyone else is. But for the group of people who actually entered the field because they genuinely enjoyed problem solving, the push for AI adoption does take away the source of some of that intrinsic motivation. So if you're thinking about a career change or want to take a stab at building something on your own, you're going to want to level up your critical thinking skills. Research has shown that the best way to do that is through problem solving, not memorizing. That's where today's sponsor, Brilliant, comes in. They help you become a better thinker by visually helping you understand new and complex topics. As engineers, it's good to have foundational understanding of how the code we write translates into physical operations on hardware. It helps us write more efficient code and understand ways to improve performance. That's why I think Brilliant's new course on digital circuits is a fantastic intro to logic gates, circuit design, truth tables, and logical statements. They're all concepts that will really help you understand the impact your code has on the hardware running it. Brilliant's constantly updated course library is designed for focused, meaningful learning to help you develop a new skill or deep understanding, either in programming or something that you've always had an interest in. If you'd like to try this course or want to learn something new, sign up to see everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days by visiting brilliant.org/Catherine Lee or scanning the QR code on screen. Or you can click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you so much, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video. It's refreshing to see more people reject the idea that the mainstream definition of a successful career should be their own version of success. People are putting their own fulfillment above the external validation a fancy job title brings. And to me, that will always be a good thing. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.